Welcome to this explainer. You know, when most of us think of psychological assessment, we instantly picture a clinician analyzing what's happening inside one individual's mind. But what happens when we shift that microscope to the space between people? Today, we're exploring the rigorous, highly complex, and honestly deeply fascinating world of interpersonal psychological assessment. We're going to uncover the exact frameworks clinicians use to map out our relationships. Okay, let's dive into this. The core mystery a clinician is trying to solve always starts here. How does this individual relate to others? It sounds like a pretty simple question, right? But a clinician isn't just asking if someone happens to have friends. They're trying to uncover the exact mechanics of how a person establishes bonds, communicates, manages conflict, and seeks support when the world gets heavy.
Think about traditional individual assessments for a second. Things like IQ or personality tests. Those are vital for measuring cognitive function and enduring internal traits. But interpersonal assessment is a completely different ballgame. It zooms out from the individual in isolation and focuses heavily on social functioning and relationship processes. Because at the end of the day, human psychological well-being deeply relies on social contexts. We literally do not live in a vacuum. Our resilience, our coping mechanisms, and our overall adjustment are all heavily influenced by our family, romantic partners, and peers.
Here is our roadmap for mapping out this rigorous behind-the-scenes methodology. We'll cover 1. Beyond the individual, 2. Guiding theories, 3. The toolkit, 4. The clinical process, and 5. Limitations.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1, Beyond the Individual. We first need to properly define the science we're investigating here.
Interpersonal assessment absolutely isn't just some casual chat on a therapist's couch. It is a highly systematic process. Clinicians are rigorously evaluating the nature, quality, patterns, strengths, and difficulties within a person's relationships. They really want to understand the invisible architecture of how people form attachments, manage conflict, and seek support from significant others.
And this brilliantly illustrates what we call interpersonal functioning, which is exactly how individuals relate to and interact with other people. This is absolutely crucial to understand because so many psychological symptoms like severe depression or anxiety are often heavily influenced by or expressed through these functioning difficulties. For example, severe anxiety might actually be rooted in an intense fear of rejection. By assessing interpersonal functioning, clinicians get to see the social environment where these symptoms are actively maintained.
Moving right along to part 2, Guiding Theories. Clinicians need foundational theories to guide their clinical investigation. You can think of these 3 primary frameworks almost like distinct lenses on a camera. If they use attachment theory, they're looking backward at early caregiver relationships to understand modern issues with trust, dependency, and whether a person's attachment style is secure or insecure. Now, if they switch to family systems theory, they view the entire family as an interconnected machine. In this view, one child's acting out might actually be a symptom of hidden parental conflict or poor boundaries. And finally, through interpersonal theories, they hunt for recurring, real-time destructive cycles, repetitive interactions that constantly trap a person in emotional distress.
So we have the theories, but how do we actually measure this in the room? That brings us to section 3, the toolkit.
An essential case formulation tool here is the genogram. Now, this is far more than just a standard family tree. It is a visual representation of family structure across multiple generations. By mapping out specific symbols and connections, a clinician can suddenly visualize these invisible, intergenerational webs. They might spot a pattern of repeated marital conflict, emotional distance, or even addiction that has been passed down for decades. It perfectly explains how broader, historical family patterns are directly influencing a patient's current struggles.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that clinicians don't just rely on casual observation or intuition. They use specific, highly standardized clinical instruments. For instance, the dyadic adjustment scale doesn't just ask, "Are you happy?" It evaluates relationship quality and marital satisfaction based on standardized metrics. Alongside this, tools like the family environment scale measure the psychological climate of a home, assessing cohesion and conflict. The adult attachment interview systematically explores attachment experiences, while social support measures objectively assess the actual availability and quality of a person's emotional safety net.
But here's the real secret sauce: multi-method assessment. Professionals rarely rely on just a single test score. Imagine a couple reporting on a questionnaire that they communicate beautifully, but then, when observed in the clinic waiting room, they spend 20 minutes completely tearing into each other. You have to integrate these standardized tests with actual behavioral observation, clinical interviews, and collateral reports to really understand an individual's functioning.
Let's move to and see how this builds into section 4, the clinical process.
Think of this as the structured, step-by-step cognitive map for a clinical detective. It always starts with Step 1, referral and history, clarifying exactly why the patient is here and gathering developmental background. Next, in Step 2, the interview and observation phase, the clinician explores experiences verbally while closely watching actual interaction behaviors. Then, Step 3 is assessment, deploying the standardized tools we just discussed, like genograms or the DAS. Step 4 is interpretation, where they integrate all those multi-method findings to identify vulnerabilities. This naturally leads to Step 5, case formulation, and finally, Step 6, treatment planning, where they use all these findings to guide real-world interventions, like family or couples therapy.
I want to pause for a second on Step 5, case formulation. This is absolutely crucial. Contemporary assessment is a hypothesis testing process, not just a simple measurement procedure. This isn't just handing someone a test score. This is where the clinician builds an integrated explanation of the psychological difficulties based on all their findings. Which brings us to our final section, limitations and complexities, because every scientific method has its flaws.
So the crucial point is that this system isn't perfect, and there are serious ethical considerations. Self-report bias is a massive hurdle. Two partners will often describe the exact same argument completely differently, usually trying to minimize conflict to look better, which introduces social desirability. Plus, you have to account for cultural variations. What's considered a healthy family role in one culture might be entirely different in another, making multicultural competence absolutely mandatory. We also have to remember the dynamic nature of relationships. They are constantly changing. And of course, there's no clear causality. Does relationship conflict cause depression, or did the depression cause the conflict? It's a real chicken and egg situation. To wrap this all up, I want to leave you with this sort of golden rule. Relationship problems are often interaction patterns, not just individual problems. It's a paradigm-shifting thought, isn't it? The next time you consider mental health, try to look beyond the individual to the entire ecosystem of their interactions. Because if our greatest psychological struggles are born in the spaces between us, couldn't our greatest healing be found there too? Thank you so much for engaging with this explainer.